and I would like to welcome you all to the openBIM series. So my name is Mona Zoughaib. I'm the managing partner of We Grow Minds, collaborating with Dubai Municipality on the buildingSMART UAE chapter advancement. So for those who think that buildingSMART UAE just started now, that's not the case. So buildingSMART UAE wasn't born today. It was created 4 years back, and it's resuming its activities stronger and at a larger scale. So it is, yes, Dubai Municipality is hosting the United Arab Chapter since 2020 as an initiative for enhancing and supporting digital transformation in the construction sector in the UAE and the region. So the initiative aims to establish an open community for stakeholders interested in advancing the construction sector, fostering collaborative efforts and promoting the use of and development of open standards for BIM, building information modeling. So who would like to be part of this community? We're going to share with you the QR code that you can join us as members, whether corporate, individual members, even if you'd like to sponsor our activities. As you know, this is a non-profit chapter. So now it's the time to join us. We have now more than 500 members in less than 2 months, in addition to the previous members that have joined. And we would like to really grow this community further. I would like to run a quick video about the chapter.
Step into the future of construction with buildingSMART International. We are leading a groundbreaking transformation in the built asset industry through the revolutionary power of building information modeling, BIM. Discover how the buildingSMART UAE chapter, proudly hosted by Dubai Municipality since 2020, is pioneering this global movement right here in the UAE. Imagine being at the forefront of a digital revolution that's reshaping the UAE's construction sector. Our mission is to propel the UAE's construction industry into the digital era with openBIM standards. We're committed to enhancing global competitiveness and fostering sustainable urban development through innovative digital solutions. Are you ready to lead the charge? buildingSMART UAE invites you to engage with us through cutting-edge educational webinars and interactive seminars. These events will connect you with the latest advancements in the industry and keep you at the forefront of innovation. Take the lead and drive change. By joining our community, you'll help transform the UAE's construction landscape into a model of excellence in innovation, collaboration, and sustainability. As a member or sponsor, you'll unlock valuable benefits: expert-led training, exclusive discounts, premier networking opportunities, and the chance to influence industry standards. Get ready for more opportunities to connect, learn, and grow. Your action matters. Together, we can turn our ambitious vision of a digitized, efficient, and sustainable construction industry into reality. Join us now, be a trailblazer, and help build a legacy of excellence in the UAE's construction sector. Connect with us today and be at the forefront of the future.
Mona, you're on mute.
So this is thank you, Casey. So this is our QR code for members registration form for buildingSMART UAE chapter. I'm going to give you a few seconds just to connect. And of course, you can follow us on YouTube channel, our LinkedIn and every, social media. Let me start by introducing our amazing esteemed guest, Casey Rutland. So when it comes to digital transformation, Casey is passionate about helping companies realize the benefits of introducing digital workflows and the resulting data. He's a keynote speaker, university lecturer, expert witness, sustainability champion, diversity champion, and offer his time to NEMA, which is formerly the UK BIM Alliance, now buildingSMART UK and Ireland, the Construction Leadership Council, to advise and assist in the digital transformation of those involved in the built environment. Casey's ultimate aim is to add digital agility to people, processes, and technology in the real estate sector. So, Casey, let me start with the basics, you know, the same question that we asked our audience. But from your perspective and based on your experience, how do you define openBIM? Because I know it means different things to different people, but from your point of view, you know, that is the essence of openBIM. What is it, and how does it stand apart from other digital construction approaches?
Thanks, Mona. I'd probably start by saying that I try not to define it, but I try to discuss it in a way that makes it relevant to more people. So there are lots of definitions out there of what openBIM is, and people can go and search that and go to the buildingSMART website and see what it is and how the standards wrap around them. But the way I prefer to talk about it is about the opportunities, and I try to do it in as plain, simple language as possible. Not because I'm trying to make people feel less intelligent, but because it reaches more people. It makes it land with more people. And we've got over 100 people on this call now, so it's really exciting to see that many people that are interested in it. Before I continue, we should also remind people that there is the chat function, but there's also the Q&A function as well. So if anyone does have any specific questions as we're having this conversation, then pop them in the Q&A box, then we can track them and answer them appropriately. If we don't get round to answering them during this session, we will answer them afterwards. Typically, that's my doorbell, but I'm going to have to ignore it for now because I'm talking to you guys. So what is openBIM to me? I would prefer people thought about openBIM as standardized data. So the industry is moving into a digitally data-enabled environment where we are starting to interact with data, to create data, consume data. And the problems and the challenges that we're having are to do with how we get different sets of data to talk to one another. And I think in the conversations I've had recently, particularly out here, we probably should cover what data is in the first place, because people do have those questions. And if we see data as being a piece of information about a thing, about a property in isolation, or a piece of data, facts and figures. So it could be the fact that it's a flow rate on a pump. So in isolation, that doesn't really mean anything. So that would be data, but given the context that says this flow rate is on this pump, in this system, in this building, the context starts to make it become information. So that's really where we want to go. So we start with the raw facts and figures and the data, and in a digital way, we add context to that, and then it becomes information. And then over time, in experience, becomes knowledge and wisdom. So it is very much a progressive state. So we're taking the raw data. And when we talk about standardized data, that's really what openBIM is about. So lots of different tasks, whether it's through specification, whether it's through design, construction, planning, progress, and all of those different things, having that standardized set of data that's created from lots of different types of software, it really does enable us to repeat things and scale things and automate things. And that's really where we're getting to with openBIM. Also, I'd say that a lot of the conversation that we have tends to be about interoperability, and it's come up in the chat earlier this morning. So interoperability is great, but essentially that sounds a bit too complex for a lot of people. It sounds a bit nerdy. If we talk to C-suite people about standardized data, that means something to them. They can see the value of having standard data coming from their entire supply chain and how we start to use that data. So it really is about making the most of that standardized data for a whole different catalog of different use cases to get us progressing in a digital way, and ultimately to enter what the other industries have done in a globalized digital economy. And we can't really do that if people are still existing in the world of PDFs and in the world of just their bespoke software created data format. You're on mute, Mona.
Thank you so much for this insight, Casey. You know, Casey, we live now in the Middle East, right? And the Middle East is known for its rapid development and groundbreaking projects, like, you know, especially in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and all the Emirates, for, you know, these iconic skylines to massive infrastructure developments. With that in mind, What's your take on the maturity of openBIM adoption in the region? And are we keeping up with the global trends, or are these specific area that, where you see room for improvement in the Middle East, especially here in the UAE in terms of integration and maturity?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is there's always room for improvement. Once people have jumped onto the digital bandwagon, things just get faster and faster. So it is very much about constant iterative improvement. So yes, there are improvements to be made across the board around the world. And through communities such as buildingSMART, I'm fortunate enough to see the pockets of excellence in different countries around the world. And then understand what the baseline is. So there's pockets of excellence, and there's leadership and leaders doing really great things, but what actually is the baseline? And it's similar in the Middle East. So what I've been coming out here for work and pleasure for almost 11 years now, and finally made the move out to Dubai this year. And it's good to be engaged in that working environment to find out really what the capacity is, what the capabilities are. So the observations are really globally relevant, really. They're applicable in terms of we have this leadership and baseline, the fast followers coming through, and then we have what we call the laggards who are just slowly coming through or just not aware of what this is. And it is really, one observation I'd make out here is that the openBIM process, or in particular industry foundation classes as an export from design tools, is largely used as that, and that's really missing the opportunities. So what I'd say is that, yeah, the maturity is across the board fairly low, but there are opportunities to improve that very, very quickly. And as you say, buildingSMART UAE is the chapter in this region that can say, this is what's possible. We can take all of those really good leadership best practices and show people what's possible. And that's part of what being a chapter is. Should also probably mention that I'm chair of buildingSMART UK and Ireland still, even though I live in Dubai. I've noticed one of my vice chairs, Nick, is also on the call. So we are very much an international community, virtual first, running the same programs around the world to educate people, raise awareness. We're not necessarily here to train people, but raising awareness and pointing them in the directions of various different training for individual tasks. So yeah, maturity can be improved, will be improved, and once people hopefully are engaging with the types of conversations that I think we should be having, then we'll get into some real value-added benefits, and we'll be able to see those. So I think what I'd like to see is the maturity raised and people actually using the standardized data for their own purposes, and that's really that twist in the maturity. So understanding that it's not just a format to be exported for other people, it's to understand that there's a standardized data that means in your own organization, in your own company, in your own project, in your own work as an individual, there are benefits to having standardized data about the things you're doing. So that's really where I think we should be heading in terms of the overall direction.
Amazing. I guess we are heading in the right direction. Every now and then, even buildingSMART International are opening more and more chapters. Now there is a chapter opening in Saudi Arabia even. So every industry shift brings with it a wave of opportunities, right? So in the case of openBIM, Casey, and its growing presence in construction and infrastructure project, where do you see, the biggest opportunities for the Middle East to leverage this technology, whether it's like in project efficiency, sustainability, or something else? So what stands out to you as the most promising areas for growth?
There are so many, and that's part of the challenge, is that people, hopefully through this webinar, people will understand that they need to find their value in this process, and I guarantee it's there. People have been there, done it before the people on the call. It's there to be learned from. So there are such huge opportunities, and I think in putting this in context, the challenges with not doing it are probably far greater than the challenges with doing it, or they certainly are. Because, and I like, people have heard me talk about this in certain ways, and it's not technically right, but it is happening. And in our industry, lots of people are creating their own data formats or data structures. They might be clients, they might be engineers, they might be product manufacturers or whatever, but they're creating their own way of digitally describing their part of this entire process. The way I anecdotally like to describe it is that the standardized language we have is very similar to the standardized language we have, HTML, that is used to write
Open source
websites, the internet, open source, standardized, globally standardized. And that's kind of what we have with IFC. It's a standardized, globally agreed, published ISO standard that says this is how we can digitally describe the built environment and the processes that happen in and around it. So it's not just for design, it's not just for construction, it's whole life cycle. And we'll come on to some of the tools that buildingSMART have and the resources that they have. So just imagine you're a company, you've started up a new company doing whatever, doesn't matter. You need a website, you create a website, but you choose not to use HTML. You choose instead to write your own language. And then you choose to create a browser that reads your own language. So you've got something internally on your localized environment that works. It works. You can see something that looks like a website, but no one else can. No one else around the world. You can't engage in the internet. So that's the part of the challenge. So if we take that concept across to the built environment and the places that we work, that's kind of what we have. People are creating their own way to digitally describe things. When there's a standardized, globally agreed around the world by various different experts around the world to describe the built environment from a digital perspective. So it really is that level of awkwardness when it comes to people not knowing that there's a ready to go out of the box or out of the standard way of describing your digital assets. So with that in mind, if you decide then to just pick up this standard, ISO 16739, if anyone's interested, they can go and search for it, find it, and links to it on the buildingSMART website. There are ways to navigate it that's free to navigate the schema itself. But there are huge opportunities then in having this standardized data. So whether it's for all the things that are relevant in daily challenges across the world, decarbonisation, life cycle carbon analysis, design coordination, just sharing designs between people, doing the design analysis in an open standardized way using the latest tool that someone's written based on the open standard. We can do project progress tracking and monitoring, either in the design stage or the construction stage. We can do asset management. This is all about creating data about things and spaces and processes. So all of those things that we have. We can talk more probably in another webinar about the Dubai municipality building permit submission process. So all based on this standardized data, and they can do that because they know there's software out there that supports it, and they've created a standard set of rules and checks for buildings over a certain threshold or projects over a certain threshold. That means that we can basically take information from wherever it was created, it's exported to IFC, Industry Foundation classes, and then the municipality can run their checks on it in an automated way that says this is the automated regulatory compliance checking. It will expand, and we're starting to see those things happening. Well, they are happening all around the world in pockets. So as and when they are mature from a regulatory purpose, these things are happening and being put in place. So that's already happening in the Dubai municipality.
Exactly. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to continue that. We need to leverage the power of the communities that we have around buildingSMART and the people that are already doing it, and the standards and the software that does it. We're not forcing everyone to use a particular piece of software, as tends to be happening in certain projects or regions. We're saying use the software that you're using, but standardize the way you create the data and the format of that data, and then it can be leveraged by many more people. So that standardization, repeatability, automation, and scalability is really what other industries have gone through in their digitalization. So it's about doing that same thing, but for the things that we're in.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, Casey, you just talked about so many benefits, you know, of openBIM and using, you know, open standards. So despite the clear benefits that openBIM offers, you know, we can still see some hesitation or slow adoption, you know, in some sectors, right? And what do you think are the main barriers preventing the widespread adoption of openBIM? Do you think it's like, is it something technical? Is it cultural? Or maybe because of lack of understanding? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, on what's holding industries, back.
That's a good question, and it also mirrors, or in fact, kind of two of the questions from Nadim on the Q&A.
We have 143 now attendees.
Yes, good, great. There are many challenges, but none of them are insurmountable. I think the first key challenge is the perception of what IFC is, what buildingSMART and openBIM is. And as we've explained, if we take the approach where it's about standardized data, suddenly that unlocks a lot of things. And what I would say is that the work that's gone on with the buildingSMART community, and it is very much the community around the world that's gone to creating the standards over, well, I think buildingSMART's been in existence for 20+ years. So over that period of time, a lot of work has been done to set the groundwork, the standards, to write them, to get them approved and published as international standards. Huge, huge, huge amount of work. And we can't understate that work that's gone on. But in terms of the communication right now to the every person in industry, it gets too technical too quickly, very often. So I think we need to just broaden the conversation, and buildingSMART have acknowledged that. So now we're not just talking about the technicalities of what's in the standard and what's contained in it. We're talking about what are the use cases for standardized data. And there is a buildingSMART use case management tool. And there are hundreds of use cases on there right now, whether it's evacuation analysis or cleaning of glass facades. People need data about those things to be able to perform those tasks.
Exactly.
And it's there, available to search, to find. And you can go to the buildingSMART website and find the link to the use case management tool. But it's understanding that use case. So what is it you need data for? Why would standardized data be good for you? How can that be procured? What's the best way to deliver it? Through standardized processes, through information delivery manuals. And then ultimately, when it comes to procurement, how people ask for that, how clients ask for that data to be delivered. And that's part of information delivery specification. So lots of different challenges in terms of the communication piece. So too technical too quickly, being taught or perhaps having the misunderstanding that it's just for exporting, you can't really use it beyond that, it's just 3D models. Probably worth noting that IFC is sometimes about 3D models. And again, when I say IFC in this context, we mean industry foundation classes, not construction. It is sometimes about 3D models, but it is always about the data. So that's misconceptions sometimes. Sometimes people think it's just a way to export, to import someone else's 3D model into my software. It does that. Yes, that's part of it. That's a small part of its thing. It's a process and its reasoning, but there are many, many more use cases for the data that we create in the first place. So that's really what it is. And as I said before, going back to that, interoperability is complex. It's even the word itself is difficult to say, but it sounds more difficult than it needs to be. It's about sharing information consistently from whichever software is appropriate to be using. Now, there are, when it comes to design, there are the big software houses that are there and have been for many decades, and they do things, they engage with the buildingSMART process, we can export files, but there are also free or low-cost softwares that do something very, very well. It might be an LCA, a lifecycle analysis tool. It might be something that understands embodied carbon. It might be something that understands regulations or measuring or checking. It might be the design process. The tools like Bonsai, that used to be called BlenderBIM, free for people to be able to design, model, document, and still export and create standardized data through IFC. So huge opportunities. But I would say that the main thing that's stopping people doing things is misunderstandings of what it is, lack of awareness, and that comes down to what the chapters, buildingSMART chapters are there to do, to communicate and raise awareness. But then some people are stopped by saying it's not complete, it's not finished. It's important to understand that as a schema, as a way of describing things, it can kind of be thought of like a language. And language is never complete. Language evolves every year, every month. There are new terms that are entered into the Oxford English Dictionary every year. So there are a number of things that creep into our normal language. So why shouldn't that happen in a digital way of describing the built environment? It will. As and when things become more complex, then things are brought into the schema, the buildingSMART IFC schema. So yeah, so many different reasons why people aren't doing things. In terms of practical application, you mentioned, I think before the webinar started, the buildingSMART Professional Certification Scheme. Hopefully we'll be launching that in the UAE very soon, but we don't train. It's not up to the chapters to do the training. We certify training providers to deliver that globally standardized training to people, to individuals around the region. WSP, that I currently work for in the Middle East, is in the process of becoming an approved training provider for our internal staff. So it's another way of teaching people the process and the reasons behind it. But then when it comes down to software, the software houses and developers are there creating content, training content for people to understand how to use their tools in an openBIM process. So
and by the way, the buildingSMART International in the certification program, they have lots of video that really explain, you know, the meaning of that. And I really advise you, again, as Casey said before the webinar started, to really get certified, even at the entry level. It's for free before you really go and deep dive in the foundation level. You know, we have, Casey, some raised hands over here. We have Majd Al-Mukhtar. Let me allow you to talk. Yes, Majid, go ahead. You are, yes, go ahead.
Hello, how are you?
very well,
Hello.
thank you.
How are you, Dr. Mona? How are you, Mr. Casey? All's good?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, when it comes to the UAE, what are the key points we need to look at compared to buildingSMART International and using openBIM internationally? What is the difference in the market, since you are here as well in the UAE market? Is there anything we need to look at more than international? Is there something we need to focus on more when it comes to the GCC mainly, not only UAE?
Yeah, so again, probably not a sales pitch, because we have nothing to sell as buildingSMART. We're here to just raise awareness. So Mona mentioned earlier that there will be a chapter for buildingSMART in KSA, or there is. They launched it a couple of months ago in KSA. So there's a Saudi chapter of buildingSMART International. I'm aware that there's also applications in Kuwait and Egypt as well. So when we're talking about the GCC Middle East region, the topic of openBIM and buildingSMART tools, resources, and awareness standards, it's going to be increasing. So, but when we talk about localizing openBIM, we would rather that it didn't happen in a way, because this is a globally standardized way of doing things, of sharing. So there is language, and there's ways we train and things like that need to be localized. But the more we standardize internationally, the more benefit we get, the less mapping and translation that we have to do for data terms. In terms of the maturity, I would say spread the word as much as possible, because not enough people understand what openBIM can be used for, and the opportunities of this standardized data across the board. And we're not talking about design and construction. We're talking about from the specification, the feasibility stage, right the way through the life cycle of an asset, through its entire life cycle, and not just about physical things. The IFC schema caters for processes and spaces and things like that. So we can apply data to spaces and things in terms of processes and spaces as well. So yeah, I mean, it's all really, I don't know whether there's a prioritization exercise to be done, but we certainly need to understand a bit more broadly what the opportunities are with the openBIM process. I would also add to that I was having a conversation with Alec Construction yesterday about a national annex for the ISO 19650 standards for the UAE. That's certainly something that could be valuable. It doesn't take much work. It does take a bit of writing, but we need all the Emirates to line up and make sure that we've got something. Perhaps that's something that buildingSMART UAE can initiate in terms of starting those conversations. But that's obviously openBIM and the ISO 19650 series are intrinsically linked. So that's the process. And I would suggest that the buildingSMART side of things kind of majors on part 4 of ISO 19650, but it's broadly there are tools and resources that buildingSMART has that span all of the standards. So very much something that we need to be engaging with.
Thank you, Casey. Actually, we have another attendee, Iftikhar Ahmed. She has raised her hands. I'm gonna allow you to talk. Iftikhar, how are you, Iftikhar? You are muted, Iftikhar. Can you please unmute yourself? Ask to unmute. Okay, so until Iftikhar, is back with us, I'm gonna just if like based on the question that even Mukhtar asked, you had distilled everything we've discussed today into one key takeaway. So if you really want to give, all the audience something that will stick into their minds, what would it be? What's the one piece, of advice you'd offer to professionals looking to embrace openBIM and push forward the digital transformation in the construction industry? Any takeaways, giveaways, something that they can start on, whether at the personal level or at the level where they can benefit, their organization, and maybe eliminate some of the barriers we've talked about, and really encourage the promotion of the open standards?
Yes. So I think I referred to it earlier on. Don't wait for someone else to ask you to do it. I think that's probably the best piece of advice we can.
Good one.
Find your benefit in doing it, and that's the same with the ISO 19650 process. Really, is to be, despite the talk about collaboration and working together, be a bit selfish about it. Find your benefit in the process first. Then, when you end up working with other people doing similar things, it all ties together very, very nicely. So I think that's the key thing, is to find your benefit of it. And there will be, I mean, there's almost 150 people on the call right now. I'm sure there are people on the call who are trying to create Power BI dashboards or ways of checking progress or understanding how complete their design deliverables are. And I think that's another important thing. We shouldn't just be talking about this as a BIM thing. This is about design, construction, and operation. It's very much about the whole process. It's not just it's just data in a BIM process that we're working to. So when people say BIM, generally still out here and around the world, people still think about 3D models. It's not just about 3D models, about the data as well. That's the important thing. That's the whole point around the ISO 19650 process, is to create data about things for use in operation.
Because, at the end of the day, Casey, data, it means like we're making informative decisions quickly and more efficiently. So when everybody has access to this data, regardless of the software they are using, decisions are made on the spot, and it's the right decision to be made, right?
Exactly. And that's various conversations over a number of years have determined there's a regular theme in that most what we call BIM authoring tools, so the modeling and design tools, and the processing tools, it's kind of the best place to hide data because it's not standardized. As soon as you then export something as a standardized data set, it suddenly becomes searchable. I can search an IFC file in the same way across hundreds of IFC files, and it will always look in the same place for that bit of data about a thing, the product that sits in a room or whatever. So we can't do that with standard proprietary exports from any of the big manufacturers of software. So it is very much understanding about that could save so much time, so much money across the industry, and enable us to work in that digital way. And that's, as we said, we keep coming back to practical things that are happening right now. The Dubai municipality and their e-submission process for a building permit, that's what that does. If we had to submit a Revit file, a Tekla file, an ArchiCAD file, and whatever it is, multiple different files, trying to find the information they need for regulatory checks in all of those different files would take so long that it's not worth doing. Exporting to IFC with the certain settings that the Dubai municipality provide enables them to just look at the file and say, right, where is this information? Is it there? Is it complete? Does it meet the requirements about the building itself or the facility itself? Not about the BIM side of things. It's checking the design completeness and compliance. So that's what these things enable. And like we said, the world is moving towards a digitally driven way of working. And that's what this enables.
Amazing. Casey, we have some attendees as well that have placed their questions on the Q&A. So we have Nadim Abbas. How are you, Nadim? So he's asking, in your opinion, Casey, what are the key barriers to openBIM? I think, we answered that question. Thank you for asking this. I don't know if you want to add something else, Casey, to that.
Yeah, no, repeating what we said earlier, it's about perceptions, perhaps dated perceptions, old-fashioned perceptions of what buildingSMART and IFC is, and it has come such a long way in a short period of time in the last few years, which is why it's important that we keep this awareness and communication out to industry as a local chapter here, to tell people what's going on, and leverage what's going on around the world. But yeah, it's seemingly such a large, complex topic, but it can be broken down into manageable chunks.
He asked as well another question around the same thing. What are the common challenges you and the team faced in implementing openBIM projects?
Well, it's in terms of my role here, I've been here 3.5 months, so it's starting. That process is starting. Mostly awareness, and a lot of people don't necessarily know, again, that it exists, what the possibilities are, and why we should be doing it. So we're going through that process now. We are building openBIM ways of working into what we do. And as I said earlier, WSP are becoming an approved training provider to upskill the staff in those areas anyway. So yeah, we haven't come across any challenges or showstoppers yet, because it's kind of just the right thing to do.
Amazing. So people are asking about your LinkedIn. I'm gonna just share it here in the chat. So the LinkedIn for Casey as well. So please, if you have any questions, thank you so much, Casey. Those who still have any questions, please do share them with us. Nadim as well is asking another question. Could you please share a few examples of successful openBIM projects and the lessons learned with us? This is as well Nadim Abbas.
Well, that's an opportunity for me to highlight, again, on the buildingSMART international website. There is an annual competition, the buildingSMART Awards, and there is a catalogue on there of all the finalists and winners. I think it goes back 4 years now. It might be longer, but please, yeah, have a look on there, because there are so many different aspects, whether it's to do with they're all built separated down into categories to do with technology, or different sectors. So there's infrastructure, there's buildings, various different things in there. So please take a look in there. I mean, there are so many good examples of why we should be doing this, and it's a centralized resource of things you can copy, print, share with your colleagues, with your line managers, or whatever, to get them to understand what the benefits are. But also just do a few searches for buildingSMART on LinkedIn. There is so much good content being shared. If I can do a plug, and I'll put the link in the chat when I have a second, to the buildingSMART UK and Ireland website, we have a whole section full of resources to go through for helpful, informative content by people who have got it right and have gone, this is why we should be doing it, and simplified the way of communicating what it is and how they can do it. So it's all there for people to read. And again, most of it is a lack of awareness that it even exists there as a catalogue of success stories. So yeah, share them as much as we can.
And thank you, Casey. Ahmed Nasir Bashir as well, he's asking a question. What category of construction industry, in your opinion, needs more attention to understand the importance of data quality, technology advancement, and data sharing?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I don't know if I can answer that without offending people, but it's everybody really. And this is not specific to the Middle East. It's everybody needs to understand the value of standardized data, and I keep repeating that, but it is the real key piece to openBIM. But in terms of specifics, that's very, very difficult to answer. So Yeah, there are people in construction doing it. And again, construction is one of the categories on the Building Smart Awards. The UK and Ireland have a finalist in that as well, not as a chapter, but as someone from the UK and Ireland. Two finalists, in fact. Is it construction? Is it product manufacturers? I think product manufacturers seem to get it and understand, but the implementation of it isn't quite as seamless as it could be, because they all create data about products, about their products. Historically, that information has been used as a way to differentiate themselves from their competitors. But actually, all we want to do as designers and engineers is just to compare one against the other, And then when that data is brought into a data set that then is used for regulatory compliance, we want to know that the fire performance of a door or the sprinkler system is going to meet the regulatory requirements. So having that standardized data in a way that flows all the way from product manufacture into building permits, that's kind of where we need to get to. And it's there largely already. The process for that happens and it exists. So we just need more people to engage with that.
But it needs more attention than others. We're not offending anyone, just like including
let's say product
everyone.
manufacturers then. If I have to choose one, let's say product manufacturers. And that's not in any way meant to offend them, but it's just to say we're here to help you if you need help. Building Smart has various different domains that they break out into different groups. There's infrastructure, there's rail, there's buildings, there's construction, there's product manufacturers as well. So there is, around the world, there are groups of people talking about standardized data for product manufacturers.
Amazing. Thank you, Casey. So Nauman Ansari as well is asking, can you shed some light on parallel information modeling?
On what, sorry, repeat that?
Parallel information modeling.
That's the phrase I've not heard before. Someone's going to explain that.
Yeah. So maybe we can get back to you by email, maybe, and see how it's related to that specific topic. Yeah. Another, we have, thank you, Nadeem, for sharing as well the education.buildingsmart.org entry-level introduction. So whoever would like to learn more about the topic, feel free to go and jump on the exam. I did it myself. It's really quite easy. It requires maybe only a couple of days studying and here you go. And you can aim for the foundation level, as we said, to become more expert in this same domain. Umair Wagan is asking as well, this modern era and digital engineering is required. It's a statement rather than a question, and BIM is one of that in modern construction industry. Thank you for sharing that. Other question from Mukta Shrivastava, is the future of openBIM moving forward a digital twin? So adopting digital twin will be easier with openBIM, or it's same as working on BIM?
Again, all about data. Let's park the BIM piece because different people have different perceptions what that is. Again, for me, the BIM process is the ISO 19650 piece. That's all about creating data about things. If you're going to start with a digital twin or start thinking about the topic of digital twins, then you need standardized data about the thing you're doing. Now, again, the digital twin process, and there is a digital twin business toolkit created by the Centre for Digital Built Britain and Cambridge University. I was one of the authors on that, and it goes through the process of understanding what your business case is for a digital twin is. So having a digital twin or having the idea that you need a digital twin needs to start with a business use case first. So what questions is it you're trying to answer? What are you trying to solve? If it relates to a building or a process in the built environment, there may be a requirement for a 3D aspect to that. IFC can cater for that. But there will be certainly data requirements. So information about things that you can then hang, let's call that static information about things that you can then hang dynamic data from. So sensor-based data, other systems data that you can start to bring together to answer your original business case question. So yes, absolutely. If you try and create a digital twin with proprietary formats, it's kind of a one-way road to that's your solution. That's it. You're stuck with either a software provider or a data format or whatever else. Having an open data standard that you're working to can only be a good thing going forward.
Amazing. So Umair is stating as well that I believe in the next 5 years, it will be only BIM nowadays. Top-notch industry companies and organizations are in shifting to BIM. Nadim Abbas is thanking you. I have shared the LinkedIn link for Casey, of myself, and the link to join as members. And please, in the membership registration form, please do mention, if you are willing to be our next speaker in the webinar, and mention what are the topics that you would like us to talk about in our next webinar series, openBIM webinar series by Dubai Municipality Building Smart UAE Chapter. Okay, there is another question by Githian Parabu. Why AI now? Why IAI, now BSI, Building Smart International, created IFC without continuing with STEP, disappointing the manufacturing industry, and why when IFC is now equated with the HTML, it's just an analogy. Why now the IFC is trying to convince the product manufacturers to use IFC? Bold question.
Okay, so let's deal with that in various different parts. IFC continuing without STEP is a discussion. IFC 5 is in its ideation stage. There are people throwing around ideas about what it could be. We need to keep this thing moving. We need it to be as compatible with previous standards before. As I said, one of the beauties of IFC as it is right now is that we can open an IFC file from 15 years ago, fairly easily. And if you try and do that with your proprietary software, it's less easy. So that continuity across the board is really where we need to go. Whatever we develop beyond that needs to have a similar mechanism in it, so we can the longevity, the data longevity and sustainability can flow all the way through. So we need to evolve effectively. I'm not an expert in terms of the technical, but STEP has its limitations and things are moving on towards different ways of doing things. As you said, Mona, the analogy with HTML was just an analogy. It's a standardized language for the internet. IFC is a standardized language for describing the built environment that's computer interpretable. Why is IFC trying to convince the product manufacturers to use IFC? It's because it's a standardized way of creating data. It exists out there. There is various different initiatives out there, whether it's environmental product declarations, which are currently going through an exercise in the EU to standardize the way we digitally create those. There's guidance out there, there's standards out there relating to the BIM process and EPDs. So lots of different things that are already in process. It's not a new thing. This conversation has been happening for many, many years about product manufacturers' data. It's a standardized way of describing things in the built environment. And if we have that as a hanger, let's move with that. It's not a new thing. So yeah, it's there and ready to go.
Mukta as well, thanking you for the answer, and she'd love to have more discussion in the future on digital twin related to infrastructure. So this is one of the topics. Numair, parallel information modeling, she's explaining it, is a technique we use to create the BIM model that exactly matches site conditions. As the site work progress, our models are updated. At the end of the day, there are much elaborate practices we are still exploring. So okay. It's...
Yeah, so in ISO 19650 terms or BS 1192 terms, that's just having your information updated to what was constructed. And if we call it what it is rather than using different terms, because PIM in ISO 19650 terms is a project information model, not parallel information modeling. So it is keeping your design and construction documentation up to speed and aligned with what is constructed. It's just part of ISO 19650. It's been part of the design and construction process for decades or centuries. In a digital environment, there are discussions about how we do that, how frequently we do that, how we communicate what is built on site versus what is shown in design documentation. There are scan-based mechanisms and methodologies that we can use that we can bring into model-based environments, all sorts of different things. It's not a 5-minute answer to that, but yeah, it is there. And as we say, it's standardizing the information that you exchange through those various different things is one opportunity. I'm aware of other solutions. I was testing one about 5 years ago, scanning site progress on a 4-hourly basis, using AI to recognize components, mapping those to IFC categories, and then matching that against what was designed. So that all existed back then. I don't know where that technology is now in terms of progress, but yeah, it depends how far ahead we want to go with that progress.
Thank you, Casey. Maybe our last question, if you would like. So Abir Mlaib, I guess from Lebanon. Hello, Casey. What is normally the timeline for integrating openBIM processes, and what milestones should we set to ensure timely implementation?
Okay, so that's a question that requires a digital transformation initiative within your organization or project. It's not a quick answer to that. It depends who you are, what you're doing, what your role is, what your task is. If we're talking about a typical project delivery and you're a design consultant, let's just start with exchanging models in an IFC format. So having the ability to share information across different design tools is a big benefit. Doing your design coordination in an openBIM process is really, really good because you can set your design coordination rules. What people call clash detection rules. I've got my guys to stop saying clash detection. Reason being, clash detection seems like a BIM thing. If we call it design coordination, that's a project thing. So that engages and involves the right people. But using the rules that you do your design coordination in, whatever tool you use, using those rules based on IFC properties and categories enables you to have one set of rules on that entire project, and it works on everything. So it's not just specific to software. It enables you to consume structural, MEP, architectural, civils, whatever, and then do your design coordination based on that standard set of rules across the board.
You know, to add to Maria's question, Abir question, do you think, Casey, I'm going to ask you, like, these kinds of projects can be managed by agile methodology so that, you know, they can have quick wins on the go?
Yeah, absolutely. This is like I said, the topic of openBIM is as vast as you want it to be, but focus on what you can do. In small incremental improvements that you change on every project from now on is exactly the way to do it. So understanding, right, we've always got a problem with A, B, or C. Pick A first. Solve that on the next project. If you've got time in the scope of that project, do B. And on the next project, you do A, B again, because that becomes normal, and then you do C as well. So you just keep evolving, doing small things. There's nothing better than the fail hard, fail fast thing, is that understand if something does or doesn't work, change it, do it again, and just improve incrementally. Probably worth noting that Nick Nisbet has put an answer to the step question.
The IFC, yes, is an implementation of the base step standards to add specific objects and relationships. So IFC also has XML, JSON, linked data, and knowledge graph representations. Thank you, Nicholas, for that.
We also mentioned that Nick is my vice chair at UKBIM, buildingSMART.
Anas, last question, really last question. We're 10:54. Thank you, Casey, for your time. So Anas Ayub is asking, where is the biggest gap, in your opinion, in the industry that is causing the bottleneck from achieving openBIM? Is it people, organization, mandate, authoring tools? You know, knowing that, Dubai municipality has mandated, the use of, openBIM standards as well. So what would be your answer, Casey, on that?
It's the boring answer, I'm afraid. It's culture, people's culture. People don't like change. As I said, I've pivoted from architecture to digital transformation 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 2012. And understanding how you manage stakeholders, how you go through a change management process, how you implement things is part of that training. You can, but it's not necessarily easy if you're trying to transform an industry from a technology point of view, saying you should use this software. That doesn't really help people because you're trying to change people. There's resistance built in, and
everywhere. Always resistance with any change, right?
Process, there is always the process you need to go to: people, process, technology. If you do it in any other order than that, you get resistance. So understand and engage people, which is what buildingSMART UAE are here to do, to get people involved and engaged. Understand what processes those people need to do, what their tasks are, what their current existing processes are, and then only at the last stage do you apply the technology to solve those other processes. If you do it the other way around, you will quickly jam up the situation. And that is one of the things we do see more frequently out in the Middle East rather than the rest of the world, is that there is this directive that people shall use a particular piece of software. And it doesn't really help. It forces people to use software that isn't appropriate for that stage, doing fabrication level modeling or whatever in a piece of software that isn't designed for it, or doing the coordination in a particular piece of software that isn't that good for doing those things. So there's a bigger world out there, is what we'd say. Look at the landscape of options that we have once we understand processes on a company level or a project level. But if you put openBIM at the heart of that, it gives you so much more flexibility to do various different things.
Beautiful. Any last words before we share again our QR code for joining our community? Any last words you'd like to share with our amazing audience? We reached more than 150 attendees, and hoping for more later.
Yeah, what we'd say is Mona will share the QR code. Please engage with buildingSMART UAE or KSA or both if you need to. But there really is the opportunity to engage with the chapter, turn up to more webinars, share the news, share the word, but start. It's absolutely valuable in everyone's process.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you. And thank you, audience, for being amazing listeners and for the questions you have asked. Stay connected, and to the next webinar.